Hello everybody, Ben Woodruff here. Now in today's video, this episode of Desert Lore is another edition of Forbidden Archeology. This one I highly recommend, and I will put a link to this. Watch my first episode of Forbidden Archeology because that was a Google Earth map tour and it's going to show this site as well as a bunch of other sites that are connected to it. So you're going to get a much better idea of the significance of this location by watching that video as well. So I highly recommend it. But this one we're going to what the locals always called Indian Cave. Now this, I would not be sharing this site, but basically it's categorically inaccessible now, and it really it's kind of sad. I want people to be aware of the history of this area. So this site is a cave in northern Utah, and it is also a quarry where there is a lot of flints and cherts that are good for making spearheads and arrowheads and stone knives. Since the Ice Age, people have been visiting this site. They would come up to it to harvest their stone, and then they would camp in this cave. Now the cave itself has had boulders block it off, so people don't even know it's there anymore. People did, you know, and I know I've talked to people who would go in the 70s, and I know a lot of people looted a lot of artifacts back in the day, and, you know, there probably are still artifacts buried in it, but this was not a dwelling. This was a camp. So this is a site where you go up to get your stone, and you camp a few days, and then you leave. But again, people were doing it for 10,000 years, all the way up until the time of the Utes, you know, 150 years ago, whatever, not that long ago. And it's a very strategic spot. You can see where the mammoths would come in the floodplain down below to hunt woolly mammoths and bison and camels and American horses, things like that. Really cool site. Nobody knows about it. And there's artifacts everywhere. There's lithic. So a lithic is, if you take a stone, so normally if you have here's like a clothes point, right? So if you have this is a finished piece. So in that process, you're hitting stone and taking off flakes. I'm a flint napper. I'll have demos in upcoming videos showing how to flint nap. But those flakes that come off are actually tell more than a finished piece. This, it's like, it's kind of interesting. But if you have flakes, they tell you where in the process the person was. And based off of the type of flaking, it can tell you roughly what time period these people were at. You know, is this an archaic piece? Is this a Ute piece? Is this a Fremont piece? And they're all over. There's raw stone, but there's also flakes, and there's half-finished spearheads up here. There's hammer stones, and the really neat thing is, people would just leave the stones. This was like your kitchen. You know, if you go to your kitchen and you get out a knife and you cut up a tomato and you put the knife away, you leave it there. This is the same thing. The whole world was their kitchen. So if you got a tool, you just leave it there for the next person, which is strange to think about. We don't think about that. Like, you're leaving it out in the wilderness. Well, the wilderness was your home. Everything was available. So we're going to visit the site. I took my phone. I filmed most of it with my phone because that gives a moderate fisheye view, so you can better feel like you're actually there. So I'm going to first get you up to the cave. We're going to do a voiceover. We're going to do a LiDAR scan of the cave itself, and then we're going to go ahead and take a look at some drone shots of the site. So again, remember what's really crummy about this site. It has burials on the backside, and you can see where people have been digging them up back in the 70s. The sad thing is, people don't care. We let one of the state archaeologists know, and she was like, it's kind of a moderately significant site. I'm like, you can do anything about it? No. We got the town elders, they were going to build a water tower on top of the hill, and we got them to not do that. But they said, oh, we're going to have the site be just a strategic quarry where any modern flint napper can go. But now there's all these mansions built around it, so you can't really access this site, which protects it, but nobody cares. And again, there's burials. They're going to build, I know they're going to build a mansion right on top there, right on top of these burials. And you'll see some of these burials that have been partially dug up, and I'll show it during the drone section. But again, this is Forbidden Archaeology, so I'm sharing things that I would not normally share. So I hope you enjoy, and I hope it gives you a greater appreciation of what we're looking at here. Right from the parking lot, I found some chucker partridge. These were non-native species that have been introduced, and they are now filling the same role that the sage grouse used to fill in this area. It's really neat seeing them up here. They're a beautiful bird, and they taste delicious. So coming up, you can see just how close this is to the city. And right off the bat, even on the back side, I was starting to find lithic debutage, pieces of flint and chert that were flaked off. And so this is debris, this is the garbage from flint knapping activity. This whole mountainside is covered with it because there are thousands, literally thousands of years of buildup of people visiting this site and gathering material. Hiking up the way, beautiful November 1st weather. It's nice and cool. The sky is clear and air is nice and the leaves are still changing colors. It's good to get out and to feel the cool air. Up ahead I see a couple of magpies. You know, magpies are a deeply symbolic bird for me and have been since I was a kid. They're a member of the corvid family, the ravens and crows, and I think seeing a couple of magpies here is a good omen for this day. Finding more artifacts here on the ground, including a modern one. This is an arrow. Somebody shot a carbon fiber arrow, and right next to it there's also ancient artifacts. The thing I cannot help but ponder is, how long will this arrow last? 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, will it be laying here and somebody will find it and think about ancient hunters? The magpie keeps watching me. I think he knows what I'm thinking. But again, everything changes over time. And how many thousands and thousands of people over the thousands and thousands of years walked up on this hill, camped up on this hill, and flaked these pieces of chert? If you could play all of time overlapping, it would be like an entire city of people, because if you have 10,000 years worth of visiting, it builds up quick. Now if you look at this, this is the raw stone itself, and the people would try to break these chunks out to get the higher silica levels. You can see some more under here. Hopefully you can see that nice glassy blue sheen. So there's broken pieces, but they would also try to literally hammer it out of the rock itself. Here's another nice lithic. Again, these are entirely covering this whole site. I stopped to pick up a few to show on film, but I mean, they were everywhere, and they likely will continue to be. This is a nice piece. This has got a lot of silica. It's very glassy. Some of the pieces are not quite so glassy. We'll see some in a minute. Now up ahead you can see kind of this debris field, and this is again where people sat for thousands of years and would break and would chuck off the pieces they didn't want. This piece is interesting. You can see right here there's a defined line. You see this line right here. This is the normal stone with a patina on the outside, and you can see where they're breaking down to that kind of glassy bluish purple stone underneath. So they were not just picking it up off the ground, but were actively trying to high grade this stuff. There are so many artifacts in this pile right here. Every single one of these rocks was touched by human hands. Maybe 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, and it has just built up and built up. And these people down below have no idea. Getting up a little higher here, you see some of these rocks, and people who know of this site assume that these are the caves, but these rocks and boulders and shelters where people would camp are not the caves. We're going to go to the cave itself in just a minute. Now this one you can see, this has got fossils in it. This does not have a lot of silica. It's not very good for flaking. This is chucked by the side, and we're going to go ahead and compare this. Here's another piece that is very glassy, exceptionally glassy, and that is what you want, so that when it is hit, it will take a flake cut all the way through, and you can direct how this goes. Now, this was kind of interesting. I've never seen these up here. I found some cacti, and this is a food source for the area. These used to be propagated much further. These used to be eaten by the camels, the wild camels that used to be here. They eat them with the spines, and they'll poop out the seeds elsewhere. And now in northern Utah, we do not have as many cacti, since we don't have have a seed distributor like a camel. I'm going to go ahead and climb up here to the top. It really is a beautiful site, and again, I was just trying to film kind of a synopsis of this whole thing, but if you take the time at this site to look around, I mean, there's millions of artifacts of all different kinds. And these people have no idea. They just know they have a nice view. We'll keep on going up. Here's another debris field from people breaking and flaking. And we're just technically walking over artifacts. Up on this hill, a lot of deer and elk and bighorn sheep come down and eat on top of this hill. It's nice and grassy, and it's good for grazers. And I assume it was that way in ancient times as well, at least for the past 700 years, if not going back further. If you see these houses right along here, I'll talk about them again later on, where all those houses were, there used to be giant boulders, and people sat on them and flaked. And their debris piles were right there around the base of each of those boulders. And unfortunately, it all got bulldozed and turned into houses, which, you know, that is just the nature of history. History changes and history marches on, but it's sad that that was lost before it was. I wish somebody had filmed it before they bulldozed it all down. Okay, well, now this unassuming cave is quite well hidden. You can see it down here. We're going to scramble on down into it. It's an interesting cave because it has some boulders blocking the front, and you can see there's carbon on the front, there's soot. So people camped in front of it, but did they camp inside of it? We know they stayed inside, but did they have a fire inside? We're going to take a look in and see if we can find the answer to that question. Now, you can see even out front, there's artifacts just sitting right out front. There's lithics right available, and it's just part of the history. People sat here and they flaked, they camped and they flaked, and then they went back down to their villages where they were hunting. It's pretty cool. Well, let's go ahead and go inside. Well, everyone, I'm up here at Bone Cave, and I kind of feel like this is the last time I'm ever going to come up here. They're building all these mansions all around it, and there's really not access to it. This is a fascinating site. We're going to go in just a minute, but I want to talk about just the fact that this history is kind of getting lost. Normally a site like this, I wouldn't share it so publicly, but the fact that it's just going to be lost to time, nobody's going to know, nobody's going to care. I feel like the fact that I'm aware of this site, I should at least make other people aware of it. So even if people cannot access it, at least they know this local history, because this, to all these people building these beautiful mansions all around it, is just a big old beautiful hill next to them. They have no idea that it has burials on it, that it has archaeology, that it was a source of, you know, this really pretty chert up here that for 10,000 years people came up here to make their projectile points and their stone tools. It's a very interesting site. And again, if you look up the first episode I did of Forbidden Archeology, you can see across the way there. And from here you can see where there's that Fremont village, and that's just gotten bulldozed, and where there's the Indian crossing, so-called Indian crossing, where people from ancient times up until pioneer times would cross the river at that site. So many artifacts there. Everything is just getting bulldozed. And again, on the one hand, that's very sad, and we should preserve our history. And on the other hand, you could also say, well, who cares? The people of the past are in the past, we're in the present. What are the needs of the present? So, you know, I don't know. I think it's important to know our history and to know who was here and what was going on. It's really sad about this site. If you look directly down below, there's a row of houses. And that row of houses used to be a field of boulders that fell off the mountain. And around each of those boulders, there was debutage where people had sat and flaked, and they just left the flakes right there. And the hammerstones, which is a very interesting perspective when you think about today's world. You go to your kitchen, you're going to, you know, cut a tomato, you use a knife, or you leave the knife in the kitchen. That's kind of how it was. You don't take that knife with you everywhere you go. This open wilderness was beautiful, but it was just there to be had. And so having a hammerstone to harvest some flint and some chert, you just leave it there, and you or whoever else needs it next, it's there to be used for, you know, hundreds of years, thousands of years. Some of these same hammerstones were used again and again and again in place until now it's bulldozed and it's now under the rubble under these mansions, which is kind of sad. But anyways, this site, everybody used to know about this site. And again, people back in the early 1900s did a lot of excavations on it. And I think a lot of the artifacts that were in here are just in the homes around Utah Valley. I think people just were kind of treasure hunting back then. But the site itself is really cool, because this is where you would come up here to harvest the flint, but you would camp here too. You have a fire. And we're going to go take a look. You can see out front there is some definite carbonization here, you know, from soot from the fires. But we're going to see, is it inside or is it just out front? I think that's an important differentiation. So let's go ahead and go on in and check this place out. Well, scrambling down in this, these rocks have shifted even more from when I was here a few years ago. And it's even harder to get in, and much harder to get when you're trying to hold a camera at the same time. But that's okay. We're going to get in and take a look. And of course, I forgot my flashlight. I always do. But we're still going to get some good shots, and we're going to get some good LiDAR scans for you to get a sense of this place. Now, looking back in there, if you notice on these rocks, there are droppings, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But you can see it goes back a fair ways away. And this is probably good for, you know, 5 to 10 people to camp. And if you make a fire out front, you can keep it warm and keep any predators away. But if you turn around to the front, you can see those boulders are kind of blocking the way. And those have fallen down to more historic times. Now notice on this rock, there's droppings. These are raptor droppings. And you can also see them on this here. These look to be from either barn owl or great horned owl, and I'm probably going with the great horned owl. And they might even be nesting in here, since so few people know this little cave exists anymore. It probably in the summer served as a great horned owl nesting site. Owls do not build a stick nest, and they will take over a cave or, you know, a place in a barn or a hollow tree. And that's just kind of their way of doing things. So what once was the home for people for thousands of years to camp, for hunters and big game hunters, and now it's become a den for owls. Well, this isn't going to do justice, so let's get some photogrammetry here. We'll do a little LiDAR. You can see this cave does go back quite a ways. And even though my scan isn't perfect, it reminds me, if you watch my video about Bone Cave, when I visited Bone Cave, where the cave has a big opening and then it has a tight bottleneck and then it opens back up deeper. This is an ideal shape for camping because, again, you can trap heat in by having a fire up front without having smoke go in. And this is where, for thousands of years, people camped here. You can almost feel their presence being in there, just feeling the past time playing, overlapping. Now front, again, you wouldn't even notice, and you have this entire valley filled with people now. And you can see across where on my other videos on Forbidden Archeology, where I point out other sites, and you can see them there in the distance. Well, I hope you enjoyed seeing the inside of that cave. It's kind of an interesting one. It's not huge, but again, for 10,000 years, people came to this cave, and only in the past few years now, it's just nobody's going to know about it anymore, and its chapter is over. So I wanted that history to be shared. But this site, in order to really appreciate it, you got to have a drone. So let's take up the drone. I'm going to fly it around, and I'm going to point out some sites around. The backside of this hill had burials, and still does, human burials. And this has been made known. We told one of the state archaeologists, took her out, showed her, and she was like, oh yeah, it's a site. And the town elders here locally said, well, okay, we were going to put a water tower on this hill, but now we're just going to, instead, we'll just kind of leave it as a preserve where people can have access to this flint. But they're not. It's all getting, you know, surrounded by houses, but at least it's not getting a water tower built on top. But again, everything recycles, everything eventually turns back into the earth, and fossils are the living proof of that. Nothing lasts forever. And so on the one hand, it very much upsets me the fact that there's human remains on this hill that are just dismissed. But on the other hand, they are already part of the earth, and they're becoming part of the earth, and it's just part of the cycle. So, but it still kind of rubs me the wrong way. But that's out of my control to do anything about it other than to share this information with you. So let's take some drone shots and let's fly around and take a look at this place, and I'll let you know a little bit more about it. Well, going up to this site by a drone gives you a far greater idea of what the site actually looks like. There's a wide range of flint, chert, quartzite, and agate all on this one location. There's a lot of hills in the area, but this is the only site that has rocks. People would have seen this for miles around. They would have known this is the place you go to get your stone, and this is the place you go to camp in the cave. It's convenient that it just happens to be exactly in the same place that you have a good place to camp and harvest stone. But for thousands of years, people have been visiting this site, and their lives literally depended on it to get stone, to make tools for weapons, to defend themselves, and to hunt to get their own food, and to make tools to butcher with. Now you see them back there digging a pipeline, which is kind of sad because we're going to see in just a moment right where some burials are. And again, I don't know why nobody seems to care about this. We've let local and state authorities know, and they just kind of shrug it off. They're aware. If you see those pits right there, there's sort of a dirt road running up the hill, and there's 2 pits to the right and 1 pit down to the bottom left there. Those are all burial sites that people have pillaged and plundered back in the day. And there are mounds from several other sites that are unexcavated on the back there. So it's fascinating and a little alarming to think that they're building right over this, and these people have no clue and don't care, and the people who've been informed also don't seem to care. Coming back around the front, again, you can get a really good view of the site, and you can see that, even from the air, you can't see where the cave is. This would have been a wonderful strategic site. We believe that for the most part, the people who lived in this area throughout all the time, they hunted more than they farmed. And so being able to hunt, having a strategic position like this was more important for seeing where your game was, where the quarry was you were going to hunt. And again, from this lofty place, you could look out in below what used to be floodplains and see when the herd of buffalo came up. There's the cave right there, pretty well hidden. But you could, from this vantage point, you could see for miles around. You could see a herd of woolly mammoths coming in. You could see bighorn sheep coming in. And it was a good, safe location to live and to hunt. Again, you can imagine all the people, coming up here, having the kids running around, scrambling on the rocks, playing, while the adults were flint napping and, going ahead and, narrowing down the amount of material they were going to leave the site with. But now the site is basically completely surrounded by fancy neighborhoods and a sea of gray rectangles. And you can see all that stone there. And again, to the bottom left, those houses all along the road there used to be where the boulders were, where people sat. And now it's all completely changed. And that's what I wanted to share with you, so you would know about this piece of lost history. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too disheartening, but I hope it was interesting to let you know some of the local history we have here in northern Utah that people are totally unaware of. This site is still beautiful. The wind is up here, and I just saw a peregrine falcon. I saw a red-tailed hawk. I saw a couple ravens when I first showed up. I've seen a few magpies and a whole flock of non-native chucker partridge, filling the role of the sage grouse that used to be here. So there's still wildlife up here. I've seen signs of deer and elk and bighorn sheep on my hike up. So there's still little tiny pockets, little islands of wild here in even surrounded by city. So But I hope you enjoyed learning more about this history, and I hope you'll share it. And if you haven't already, if you could hit subscribe to my channel, I very much appreciate it. It helps me keep this up and running. And always remember that life is a gift. So never stop learning and never stop exploring. We'll see you next time.